Cleetus McFarland confesses he has no desire to race in the NASCAR Cup Series. Yes, you heard that right. Now, let's find out why. The same guy who once looked at NASCAR like a giant open door is now openly saying the Cup Series is not something he even wants anymore. And the reason is actually way more interesting than people think. 'Cause this is not a quitting story. This is a reality check story. And weirdly, it might be the exact thing that makes his NASCAR future even bigger from here. What happened is pretty simple on the surface. Taste of how hard National Series NASCAR actually is. Not from the outside, not from a simulator, not from watching it on TV. He lived it. He jumped into a truck race at Daytona, made his O'Reilly Auto Parts Series debut at Rockingham, ran ARCA races where he kept learning on the fly, and then nearly stole the entire Talladega weekend by finishing second after leading laps in the ARCA race. That sequence changed his mindset completely. So, today we are going to break all of that down properly. We are going to talk about how his last few races actually went, how he performed in those events, how his appearance is clearly what made him say he has no desire to race in Cup, why Nashville suddenly matters so much, and then the biggest part of this whole thing, how one strong race there could unlock more approvals and even make a 2027 full-time NASCAR path feel a lot more real. Now, let's start with the recent run of races because that is where the whole story really begins. The first major wake-up call was Daytona. Cleetus made his Truck Series debut there with Nice Motorsports, and it ended almost immediately. He spun on lap 6, hit the inside wall, and finished last. NASCAR's own recap said his debut didn't last long, and McFarland himself summed it up afterwards with, "I'm an idiot." If I'm being honest, that is the kind of race that strips away fantasy fast. It is one thing to dream about racing at Daytona. And it is another thing entirely to feel how quickly it bites you when the margin for error disappears. Then came Rockingham, and that is where his story got more complicated. Earlier that same day, he ran the ARCA Menards East race and actually looked solid. He finished fourth, which Motorsport.com described as his first top 5 in any NASCAR-sanctioned event. In that post-race moment, he sounded genuinely fired up, talking about turning left for Greg Biffle, and saying he had more confidence in a stock car than ever before. That mattered cause it showed there was something real there when the level matched where he was in his development. But later that day, in the O'Reilly race itself, the difficulty level shot up. He started 35th and officially finished 32nd, 6 laps down. NASCAR.com called it an adventurous debut. He had multiple moments where the car got away from him, including a late spin that brought out a caution. And by the end of it, he had completed the race, but also learned just how steep that next ladder rung really is. Fox Sports quoted him admitting, "I am way in over my head." And honestly, that line probably explains this entire story better than anything else. And yet, here is what made Rockingham important. He survived it. He did not tear up the whole field. He got to the end. He learned. Even some veterans in the garage respected that. Justin Allgaier told Fox Sports he was proud of the effort McFarland put in to have a solid day, especially with all the social media noise around him. That does not mean Cleetus suddenly proved he belonged at the front of the O'Reilly field. It means he proved he could take a hard day, absorb it, and keep going. Then Talladega and ARCA changed the tone of the entire conversation. He started 20th. He quickly drove into the top 10. He led laps for the first time in his ARCA career. And by the time the race came down to the final dash, he was right there, door to door for the win, before Andy Jankowiak slipped by and Cleetus finished second. That was not a lucky 12th place result because he missed a wreck. That was a legitimate runner-up finish in one of the wildest races of the weekend. And once that happened, people inside and outside the sport had to start taking the progression more seriously. Now, here is another part of the story that matters because there is a viewership angle, too. Cleetus is not just bringing a car to the track. He is bringing eyeballs. At Rockingham, the O'Reilly race on the CW drew 1.165 million viewers, up 11% from the comparable race a year earlier. Then at Talladega, the ARCA race averaged 446,000 viewers, up 41% year over year. I want to be careful here and not claim one driver alone caused every single one of those extra viewers because TV audiences are never that simple. But it is absolutely fair to say his appearances have coincided with real audience bumps, and NASCAR knows that. He also brings a YouTube audience measured in the millions, which is exactly the kind of reach the sport has wanted for years. And that is what makes his confession so fascinating, because right when his stock is rising in public attention, right when Talladega made him look more legitimate than ever, right when the whole Cleetus effect conversation is getting louder, he comes out and says something that sounds almost anti-hype. The quote that grabbed everybody was this: "Now that I'm in this, I don't want a race cup at all." That's terrifying to me. He also said the gap between his skill and those cup drivers is massive. That is not fake humility. That is not some PR safe answer. That is a guy who got close enough to the machinery, the pace, the pressure, and the standards to understand just how enormous the leap really is. And honestly, I think that quote helped him, because one of the biggest criticisms around Cleetus from the start was that he was just another internet star trying to skip the line, another guy with a giant audience who thought he could jump straight into top-tier stock car racing because he had money, fame, or a connection. But this quote cuts directly against that. It says the exact opposite. It says he now understands the criticism. It says he knows Cup is not some cosplay dream you just walk into. It says he finally sees the separation between being entertaining and being elite. He also made clear that ARCA is where he feels most comfortable right now. He basically described ARCA as the level where the competition is still manageable for him while he learns, which makes total sense when you look at the results. His best recent NASCAR sanctioned finishes have come there, not in trucks, and not in the O'Reilly car. So, his no desire for the Cup line is not really him backing away from racing. It is him narrowing his focus to the level where he can actually build something. And that brings us to the big thing. Before we get into it, quick pause here. If you're enjoying this one, hit like, share this video, and subscribe to NASCAR Central. We are trying to push this new channel to 5,000 subscribers, and getting this video to 100 likes would be a huge help. Now, here is why Nashville could change everything. NASCAR Vice President Mike Ford said McFarland's next step is the O'Reilly race at Nashville. After that, the approval committee will meet again and decide what comes next. Ford said the normal next step would be intermediate tracks, but he also said there is a scenario where McFarland could be approved for the whole kit and caboodle, including super speedways, if Nashville goes well enough. That is the single most important development in this whole story, because it means Nashville is not just another start. It is an exam. And if he aces it, the map changes. Think about how big that is. A few weeks ago, NASCAR's John Probst was saying they still wanted to see more from Cleetus at short tracks before approving him for Talladega in the O'Reilly Series. Then Cleetus went to Talladega in ARCA, led laps, finished second, and suddenly the conversation evolved from not yet to, let's see what Nashville tells us. That is real movement. Not automatic approval, not a guarantee, but real movement. And Nashville matters for another reason, too. It is a cleaner test. Daytona and Talladega can be chaotic. Rockingham was a huge jump in difficulty. Nashville can show whether Talladega was just a one-race superspeedway magic trick or whether the learning curve is actually bending upward in a serious way. If he runs a disciplined race, keeps the car clean, shows pace, and looks like he belongs there, then NASCAR has a much stronger case to open the next door. That still does not mean Nashville will suddenly make him want to race Cup. I want to be clear about that. Nothing public right now suggests he is secretly chasing a Cup ride next month. In fact, the clearest thing he has said is the opposite. But Nashville can change everything around him. It can change his approval level. It can change how teams look at him. It can change how sponsors view the risk-reward equation. And maybe most importantly, it can change whether this becomes a one-off curiosity or a serious, multi-year NASCAR project. And that leads straight into the 2027 question. There is no official announcement that Cleetus is becoming a full-time National Series driver in 2027. That part needs to stay honest. But he has now openly said that if they can make the money work, what he is looking forward to trying to do is race a full season of ARCA. That is the clearest full-time path he has publicly talked about. Not the Cup. Not even necessarily O'Reilly full-time. ARCA. And if we are reading the tea leaves here, that makes a lot of sense. Why? Because a full ARCA season is the one move that connects every dot. It fits the level where he has been most competitive. It gives him the seat time he badly needs. It lets him keep building racecraft without throwing himself into the deep end too fast. It would also make him a much more permanent NASCAR presence because once you are doing a full schedule instead of a handful of cameo starts, the conversation changes. You stop being the YouTuber showing up again and start becoming a regular part of the story. That last part is partly my inference, but it lines up directly with the full season ARCA idea he has floated and the trajectory NASCAR is still evaluating through the approval process. There is one more wrinkle, though. McFarland has also admitted in the past that a full season would be demanding, and that with his content business, he is not even sure it would be worth it. So, this is not a done deal. The ambition is there. The practicality is still the question. That is why Nashville matters again. If Nashville goes badly, maybe the project slows down and 2027 stays part-time. If Nashville goes well, and if the merch, sponsors, and audience numbers keep backing him, then a full ARCA season starts looking a lot more realistic than crazy. And really, that is the heart of the story. Cleetus saying he has no desire to race Cup is not the end of the dream. It is the first truly mature thing he could say about where he stands. It means he finally sees the mountain clearly. It means he is not pretending to be something he is not. And paradoxically, that honesty might be exactly what gives this whole NASCAR run more staying power because the drivers who last usually know what level they are at, what they still need to learn, and what ladder rung they actually belong on next. So, if you strip away the headlines, the real takeaway is this. Cleetus McFarland is not chasing the Cup right now. He is chasing confidence, approval, and a sustainable future in NASCAR. His recent races have given him hard lessons, some credibility, a couple of real results, and clear evidence that people tune in when he shows up. Nashville is now the checkpoint that could decide whether this stays a sideshow or turns into a much bigger long-term plan. So, subscribe to NASCAR Central for more breaking NASCAR news, driver reactions, approval drama, comeback stories, and all the biggest stories from around the garage. Drop a like and let me know in the comments. Do you think Nashville is the race that opens the whole next chapter for Cleetus, or do you think a full-time 2027 ARCA season is still the smartest path before anything bigger happens?